Hello and welcome to Between the Stacks, a podcast about libraries and library people. I am Anna Au. Today our guest is...
Timopekka Sillantaus. I work in Tapiola Library, Espoo, Finland. I was a teacher for 15 years and now I've been a library pedagogue for a little bit over 10 years.
Okay, you have a story about you and Mikko.
Yes. Shall I tell it?
Yes, you may start now.
Okay. One day in library, I happened to see some confusion in the so-called handcraft department. There I found a young man lying on the floor and discussing with the staff. The man wished that he could just lay in his back for a while. After a while, he was able to move himself into a little more peaceful spot of the department and continued his rest there. Earlier, he had had a quite dramatic-looking stroke where he had suffered from cramps all over his body, while he moved around the space quite an uncontrollable-looking way. I stayed a while in a nearby. After he had woken, after maybe half an hour, he asked me to order himself food from the local pizzeria. I made an order, and we went out from the building to the nice summer day to wait a pizza to receive. His walking was clumsy and the balance poor. He paid for the pizza, ate slices and told me some of his situation. He had got the syndrome called Tourette at 13 while the stay in Moscow where his father worked in a company that period of time. He graduated high school, but after having suffered from the all-worsening symptoms, he had to give up studying further. The strokes appear nowadays about every other hour of the day. Even though Mikko is not a violent person, his access to about any public place is recently been denied. Even at the spots of homeless people and even at the so-called wet part, where it is possible to enter even intoxicated, his stay had been denied. That is because the Rule 3 that forbids all the disturbances for the others. It is impossible for Mikko to follow constantly that rule. The treatment there as well by the other clients and the staff was also so bad that Mikko didn't even want to get back there. That is how it was with the other places alike as well. The library was the last place for him to stay. Gradually Mikko became a regular customer at the Tapiola Library. Since he usually required special attention from the staff, I found best to inform the chief of all Espoo library services about him. The chief unconditionally expressed that everyone is allowed to enter the library and gave me a sliding mandate to focus my working time for him as well, as a guidance to the service that was included as a one to the assignment of a library in Espoo. Summer ended and autumn came and things around Mikko proceeded about the same way. He had got quite a remote area in the department of music material to be able to sleep and rest on the soft carpet on the floor. The other guy from the staff and I were as well inclined to help Mikko. However, we were not all the time in our shift to satisfy the occasional but sometimes relatively demanding needs of him. That was when the rest of staff was expected to take charge of that. The silent complaints of some employees gradually got louder. It was said that the strokes are dangerous to the surroundings and frightens children. It was also straight said that this day-to-day existence of this patron gets employees tired. In this stage, the deputies of 2 unions also came to tell me that the occupational health of the staff is now at risk. I talked once again with the chief of the library services. She was very sorry, but saw no other option but give Mikko a ban to enter the library location again. Quite soon after that, before Christmas, Mikko took a cargo ship and went to Germany. There he spent time mostly in a sailor church community. After a while, having suffered from the lack of proper food and living consistency, he returned to Finland. The same circle would begin here again. Now the mother of Mikko, who has been previously supported Mikko in many ways, contacted the social care of Helsinki municipality that Mikko would not survive the winter anymore if he would not receive a proper shelter. The social care was now able to produce a specification to move Mikko to an institute in Pieksämäki, southern Savo, that is specialized for individuals in crisis. Because Mikko has lost his trust in any of the public institutes, the specification has a status of involuntary treatment. Last summer in 2020, I went to see Mikko there in Pieksämäki, of course with my own time. He seemed as glad that he had occasionally seemed earlier too. However, now he had flesh over his bones and his seizures had decreased, partly by the well-focused medicine. He had now his own apartment there in the institute area and, for example, the services of swimming pool and gym in nearby. Mikko's case is now progressing at the Finnish highest administrative court. This is hugely important because that should give Mikko a precedent in order to avoid any more stories of this kind in the future. A major newspaper has also published an article of Mikko, and follow-up will be published as well when the paper obtains the material needed. Personally, I am glad that I had an opportunity from my chief to tell this story as a part of my daily work. Maybe the world is still worth to live in.
Where do I even begin? It's so heartbreaking to hear that some people like Mikko lost trust or hope in all other public services because these services have failed them in the past. Timopekka, your story with Mikko tells us that no matter how good the social welfare safety net is, some people will still fall through the net. We may not be able to feel it, but the problem is there. I'm glad that Mikko is living better and getting healthier now, especially when we are still in the middle of the pandemic. And there's also another side to this. Mikko sees the library as his safe haven. I feel similarly too. Libraries are always a non-judgmental and welcoming place to me, even when I was just a little kid. I cannot imagine how the life of the people who used to depend on the public library for its environment, collections, or even just a stable internet connection are, now that most libraries are operating with preventive restrictions. But I'm practicing radical optimism since last year. I do believe that things will get better and we will get there. And I have a question. Timopekka, how has your work or perspective of things changed after your encounter with Mikko?
Well, yes, thank you for the question. I think in the first place, this has been quite a kind of experimental thing for me. Mikko is, of course, a human being that I was hard to live alone in his stage, but as well, he is indication of the problem for a society. And I was most eagerly, quite, let's say, intellectually go forward and see whether he could be worth for society to react and how it will react for him. And we are on the way. We are not there yet. But as I told here in my story, the case is now in the highest administrative court, and we hope that we will get the reply there this spring 2021.
I noticed one thing from your story is that Mikko asked for food right after your first encounter with him at the library. And it shows that he's so normal, just like any of us, we want food when we are hungry. People with special needs are just like us. Tourette syndrome does not define Mikko. It's only a part of him and it's not the entirety of him. So when I heard that part where he asked for food, I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. That's the first thing he asked for. Were you surprised by this at the time as well?
Well, I think it's a part of the picture, and it's on the other hand, the surrounding people normally tend to help the individual that is in trouble. It's our nature as well. But as he will produce a threat, imaginable or real, they become cautious, and that's the story of Mikko as well. There is many novels that are written about the power of community that seems to be all right, seems to be well and healthy, but in some stage the different kind of person will be seen as a threat. And I think there is something in case of Mikko that we can say is the same thing.
That's so true. And I hope Mikko's story will continue with happier things now that he has his own apartment and he has more stability now. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the updates of Mikko's life.
Yes, I hope as well too that, and Mikko's case is first of its nature, and I think he's kind of a pioneer in that stage, and I have tried to remind him about that thing. It's an important thing, not just for him, but socially in a larger scale as well.
For people who are like him.
Yeah, for like him, and it will give us an indication of a society that is able to make it better all the time. Having told a story taking place in our library in Finland, I'd like to say a couple of words of books, the library, and how they are experienced in the area I live. The book is a symbol of freedom in the so-called Western world. In the Nordic countries, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, and Finland, it is seen quite concretely in libraries. The principle of public libraries here is to offer its services to everyone free of charges. In addition of loaning books, libraries reply for all kinds of general requirements, give a platform to work, or just spend time with no specific reason. The library in my country tries to fill all the holes the rest of the society leaves. The story of Mikko is example of it.
What a beautiful way to put it. Thank you. What's new in the stacks?
Our libraries in Espoo do not have a lot of plans now, but we hope to offer the full library services again as soon as possible when the pandemic is not as bad as it is now.
I hope for that too, and thank you for joining me in this episode. There are people with invisible needs. They may look healthy and well most of the time, but we just don't know what they are going through. When they ask for help, we should be patient and listen. It is through being kind to each other that we can survive crises or unfortunate events or just anything unpleasant. Who knows when we would be the ones who need help? Another takeaway is that being kind to each other is simply not sufficient to get to the roots of a systemic problem. Mikko's bad experience with some public institutions is only the symptom of the real issue. The initial attention, care, and support for Mikko from Espoo's public libraries eventually was proven not to be a long-term solution. His case is taken to court, and this is something bigger than himself. Fighting the system is a mission that needs the support of many people. I'm glad Mikko has that. Lastly, I'm not pretending I have the full picture of what difficulties people with special or invisible needs face in Finland because I don't. I only have a glimpse of it through Timopekka and Mikko's story. I hope to give you good news of Mikko's case in the future as it proceeds. Thank you for listening. Between the Stacks is created, hosted, and produced by me, and our music is by Sam Simon. Timopekka has obtained the consent of Mikko to tell this story. More information